Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to start a new picture and it's going to be a techniques picture just like the background that I showed you of the trees. This is another techniques background that we're going to be doing. I'm going to be giving you specific instructions, but remember, these are rules that are meant to be broken. So if you don't use the pencil I tell you to use, or you don't put the exact amount of layers that I tell you to use, it's okay too. It works. I don't want you to be so pigeonholed. But for some of you beginners, you want to know, and I know this from experience, I do X amount of layers here. I do X amount of layers there. I very specifically, you want to know what to do in a situation. And then from there, you can experiment. So this will be for like you first timers, or even not even first timers, just people that have not gotten this background right and you want to improve. You want definite definitions of what you should do. So we're going to be doing a blurred background, and this is a very blurred background that comes from when say you're taking a picture with your camera and you're taking a very up close picture. The fact that your camera is focusing on an object in the foreground, it blurs out the background because of the way the camera focuses. It becomes a very aesthetically pleasing picture because you are forced to look at that front portion. Now, here are some examples. I'm going to be doing my own art. I don't expect you to be doing, quote, quote, this art picture, but I wanted to show you some examples first of what pictures this would work for. Now, here is Jewelry Box by Hannah Calzone, a comic book that people have in the community. And even here is two examples, this page and this page. Here we have the bird cage and an empty negative space. How wonderful would it be to do this very solid and very clear and then blur out the background? It works, and it would work very well. Here I had one that I was messing with a long time ago because I would have done something a little bit better with the background. I loved what I did with with the foreground. This is another example of all of this being very clear up front. You could see the detail, but you don't want to mess being able to see the detail by making a busy background. So this picture in itself would have been a perfect blurred background. Here's another one. Perfectly clear tree, blurred background, lots of room to add any color you want. This is one that I probably would not do a blurred background, but it might work because the whole negative space is basically filled up. So you have a little bit over here. You might want to do a little bit of a blur. I can go on and on with examples of the negative space syndrome that you're going to experience, like this picture. This is the perfect example of a blurred background. You have a very clear bust of a woman and you don't know what to do with the background. I don't really love solid backgrounds. They don't come out smooth unless you really work on it, and they're rather boring. But if I had done a blurred background on this with multiple colors taken from her, or even opposite colors taken from her, you could do the complementary color. She would pop off the page. So again, this is good for so many different things. Here we have the clear flowers. It's a very good background for doing floral. It's a good background for doing, well, exactly this, where you have all that negative space. What do? But you want to focus on this. So I love this background. I'm going to give you very, very specific instructions. I'm going to tell you how many layers to put, what pencils to use, and then from there, you take it from there. By no means do you have to use these exact instructions, but these exact instructions work perfectly. So I have done a butterfly with some leaves, and I've left all this negative space. Where I got this picture was from several different pictures on the internet. I do have reference photos. They're just some pictures I pulled off of Google, and I will be using them for some detail on the butterfly and on the flowers. I am not doing an exact replica of any one background. So this can be considered original art, and with the aid of some reference photos. This is for private use. You can use photos for private use anytime. Just be careful if you're doing exact replicas of a picture and you're selling. So let's begin. We're going to start off with your base layer, and your base layer is going to be very important. You're going to establish your colors, where they're going to go, your lights and your darks. And what you want to do is concentrate on extremely soft, blurred. Nothing can be hard. There is no hard lines in this background. Everything will blend very softly into the next thing. The objects are not going to have dimension. You're not going to there's going to be no detail in this background. That's why this background is very easy to do, and it's very forgiving. I'm going to start off using polychromos, and if you want to start off using Prismacolor, that's fine too. The reason why I'm starting with my polychromos is because they're oil pencils, and we're going to be using mineral spirits with this. There's no getting around it. If you've got the talent to blend blur without using mineral spirits, all the power to you. You could try it that way, but most people will fail. So you're going to want to use some sort of blending medium with this. Now, it doesn't have to be mineral spirits. It can be baby oil. It could be, some people have had success using Vaseline. I won't use Vaseline. I think it's too greasy. That's just my own personal preference. Baby oil, the same thing. I don't really want to put baby oil on my picture, but the outcome would still be the same. I'm choosing to use mineral spirits. Now, I'm using Gamsol, which has there's no odor. It's odorless mineral spirit. So it's a little bit less aromatic. I don't suggest you use mineral spirits in a closed room of any type, even Gamsol. They are chemical. You want to have really good ventilation. Mineral spirits will dry in 20 minutes. You want to make sure your mineral spirits are dry before you put on the next layer. It's very important. You don't want to be working on wet paper, and you can damage your paper. Once the paper is damaged, there is no fixing it. You might as well throw the picture out. I have no tips for damaged pictures except cover it up in some way with a frame. So we're going to be very good to our paper. This technique is going to have a minimum of 8 layers. And I know that's a lot for backgrounds, because a lot of people, they do their foreground and then they're tired and they just want to get their backgrounds done on the page. The paper that I am using is Strathmore, and it's a multimedia paper. Let me get it. Okay, this is the paper I'm using, Strathmore Mixed Media. The size is, I think it's 9 by 12, which is the same size as a piece of computer paper. I've always liked Strathmore. That's been one of my favorites. I don't do ultra high where I'm using $8 a page media. I paid $16.99 at Hobby Lobby for this book, and it came with 40 sheets. So this is the paper I'm choosing to use. I enjoy it. If another paper that I might even choose to do this on is Arteza paper. I've become a very big fan of Arteza paper. The book that I have from Arteza is large paper, so I didn't want to have to cut it down. I like my Strathmore, and I chose to use my Strathmore. Either paper you do this with is fine. Now, what I did to get my picture on there, if you don't want to sketch out use a light box. And the light boxes are very inexpensive. You can get them off of Amazon. I'll leave the link in the description to the one that I use. It's an LED light up, three settings. I always use the high setting. Plugs into your computer. It doesn't have a regular plug. And you're set to go. Luckily, my setup allows for that. It's not exactly light boxed from the exact picture. I used it for some dimensions so that I know when I want to put in some colors that I have an idea base of where those colors are on my paper. There's many different ways of getting your pictures on there. I find this is the fastest, and since there's a lot of things that I want to teach you guys, I have to budget my time. This is the easiest way. I chose to do my own artwork for this because I did not want to work out of a book and have it bending, and I wanted to control the paper quality so that I can put on a lot of layers. Sometimes you guys get frustrated. I get frustrated when there's things in a picture that I don't want to be there. This way I controlled what I wanted to have there. You can also photocopy onto good paper. If you're working with lower end, I do recommend for your printers, if you're going to do this, is when I copy something from a coloring book that I like onto better paper, I normally choose the Georgia Pacific 110 cardstock. I feel that it has enough tooth for artwork that's not personally mine, that I know that I won't be hanging in my house specifically, unless it's something I really, really love, which some of the portrait pictures I would say I would really, really love that people have done, especially if you have a PDF, it works out really nice. And that's just a suggestion and how you want to handle it and what options you have in your personal space. So let's get on with this. I have chosen random colors. I'm not going to say to you, oh, you do XXX color, because you can do this in the brown family. You can do this in the greens. You can do a red blurred background. This is completely up to you, your color choices. I have picked just about every pencil out of my polychromo set to do the bottom layer. I'm choosing to do the bottom layer because the Gamsol does not blend as harshly on the bottom layer. So if I put a color where it is, I know that base color is going to stay there. I'm going to be filling in the little gaps of where this color is very softly. And at the end, I know that base color is always going to be there. After I finish the oil layer, I'm going to use my Prismacolors. I'm going to use the same technique with my Prismacolors, and it's wax based. It's going to go over the oils. It will have nice tooth. It'll go on very smooth. It will blend up any harsh lines that I have, and when you use the Gamsol on it, it practically runs. So that's where I'm going to be getting the very, very soft layers from. I'm going to put 4 layers of oil down on the paper, and that's the oil pencil, not baby oil. I'm going to do 4 layers on my background. I know this is a lot of layers for a background. You're probably not used to doing that in a coloring book because coloring books really don't take that many layers because, it's coloring book paper. This is meant for that. I'm going to get at least 4 layers on. If I was just randomly saying, I might do 5 layers, I might do 6 layers. I'm going to do a minimum of 4 layers. I have my sketch drawn. It's very light. I don't know whether the camera is picking it up or not. But I'm going to start with my middle colors. And I'm going to very, very loosely start adding in splotches of color. And I'm working very, very lightly. My pencil is barely touching the paper at this point. I do not want to damage, burnish, or diminish my tooth in any way at all. I'm going to be choosing pencils randomly. I am not copying any specific picture, so where I put my colors is strictly up to me. I'm also not haphazardly putting lines everywhere. I want to keep my lines as smooth as possible. And I'm going to overlap into the next color. And I can use up to 20 pencils in this layer. Again, this is going to be 4 layers of doing this, and I will probably not be using the same colors on top. I will be mixing my lights and darks. You might want to put in a shape and concentrate on the shape, but very, very lightly. And I did a tutorial on the bouquet background. This is very similar, but that was very specific in using the circular shape. Here, I'm just randomly using my pencils. And because I'm going over a spot does not mean I'm adding another layer. I'm just filling in for where my pencil did not hit. I am using greens and yellows as my lights and darks. And at the end, you're not going to be able to tell. You're going to be able to tell this is foliage, but you won't be able to tell that it's any one specific object, whether it's a leaf or a tree. And I'm also not concentrating too much on shape at this point. And I'm randomly picking up my pencils. There is no damage on my tooth. And I still have plenty of it. And I've chosen about 20 pencils. I'm also not necessarily putting them in the same direction. I'm just looking for coverage. At this point, line direction is not important. And this layer should go on fairly quickly because you're just randomly adding the colors. Be dark. So in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, okay, if these leaves are dark, my background should be light. If this is light, my background should be dark. And then for the medium, it's in between. It's how you want to work it. But I'm keeping this very loosely in my mind now while I'm doing my second layer. So since I'm going to be doing these light, my second layer, I'm going to choose some of the darker pencils. And I want to do the second layer in the same haphazard way. And with multiple colors. This is going to be mixed with the yellow. This is going to be mixed with the yellow. So you're kind of formulating in your head what the final color in that area is going to be. Now, if you noticed, I have not used any dark. And what I'm talking about darks are my browns and my blacks. I will add that in later on once I get my top layer, my first 4 layers done. I'm going to go through this entire picture in the same exact way as I did the other layers, and I will come back to you when the second layer is done. Okay, we're on layer 3, and layer 3 becomes your defining. So layer 1, just to review, layer 1, you're basically putting color anywhere you want on the page, no rhyme, no reason, just get the splotches down. Layer 2, you're sort of thinking what's next to it. Is it a darker or light? You're not thinking specifically about color. I've started to put in sort of leaf-like shapes. An example over here is just a dark leaf-like shape, and in a blurred situation, you won't be able to tell it is a leaf. Now we're on layer 3. Layer 3, I'm going to start introducing some browns into the mix, and I've chosen Indian red, which is more like a sienna brown when you're doing a comp in Prismacolor, in case you guys are using Prismacolor. I've got a burnt sienna, which also has a little bit of red in it, which will mix nicely to make a nice burnt color when it comes to the greens, when you mix those two. We've got a darker, and this is burnt umber. And we have walnut, which is like a medium brown. More on the darker, earthier tone. So I've chosen these 4 pencils. As far as you're concerned, as far as picking your pencils, depending on your set, if you're going with the Prismacolor only, I would use some of your siennas, your a light umber. You can get even into the really dark brick reds. Notice the color that I'm not using, and that's black. We're not going to introduce black into this background until later on when we can define where the dark places are. Right now, I'm bringing layers and layers of color onto the page. So now I'm going to do layer 3, and I'll come back when I'm on to layer 4. After we finish the 4 layers, we're going to tap all of this down. I'm going to use some mineral spirits. And then we're going to start the process over with a little bit more precision and a little bit more purpose. Okay, we're about to start layer number 4. Layer number 4, I'm going to start making sure things are looking a little bit more smooth. Where my cross hatches are, because I've been cross hatching this whole entire time, I want to make sure each part of the cross hatch has enough that when I tap that color down, it's going to go down into the paper and it's going to cover up all the white. Remember that this layer is not going to melt as easy as the Prismacolor. I'm expecting that. So let me finish up number 4, and then I will put myself on cam and I will show you what it looks like once I do tap it down. Okay, I've started tapping it down with some mineral spirits. Now, I should have taped this down already, but my daughter took my tape. I couldn't find it. She was painting her house, and I guess she thought my low-tack art tape was painter's tape. So, I'm using a very fluffy brush. I don't want to scratch my tooth. I don't want to scrub it. This is my base, so my base colors are going to be there. I just want to blend it out. Now, different artists have different methods. This is my method. You know, they all have their preferences and brushes. This is what I prefer to use. And I don't use a lot of mineral oil. And mineral spirits, mineral oil. I don't use a lot. Just enough to get this blended. This is going to be my more difficult layer to get to blend because it's the oil pencil. Once I get my Prismacolor on next, then I should get some really nice soft blending, and that will cover any harsh lines that I have on my oil layer. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush to get some of the details. The idea is to get rid of those white spaces in between, so we never have to worry about them doing your upper layers. Your paper is completely covered. Okay, I'm going to get a smaller brush and get into the little areas that I have, but you get an idea of what I'm doing, and then I will meet you back here and we'll start doing upper layers. Okay, we are on layer 5. I have already put the Gamsol on it, or the mineral spirits. Now I'm going to look where my lights and darks are. I'm going to switch my pencils over to Prismacolor, only because Prismacolor really dissolves well in Gamsol. I mean, it practically disintegrates if you want it to. So I'm not going to have problems getting very soft edges. You can use Prismacolor for this entire project. If you have any other wax pencils, they're fine as long as they're soft wax and not oils. Remember, everybody does things different. This is my method. And I'm going to pick out similar colors from my greens to my yellows. I'm going to take the whole entire lot and get started on this. So I'm going to put away. So here I have my greens. They're a large variety. The only thing I have to do is find my light green. But I have plenty of pencils on here to start. So I'm going to start out with a true green, and I'm going to go to my areas where I did have my true greens, and I'm going to start another layer on top of it. Did I mention I let my Gamsol dry for about an hour? And I'm going to just go over some of these areas, well, all of them. I'm going to put another 4 layers on top of this. And I'm just marking it in similar color. And making sure my pencils overlap the other areas. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to let you watch, and let's get going. I have a layer of wax over my paper, and I have 3 more layers to go. Now I'm going to take section by section. I'm going to work and pretty much do the 3 layers, 4 layers, whatever together. I want to just keep blending until I get the right look. And it's kind of like hit and miss how your hand is. The colors that I'm adding in is my Derwent Chinese White. This is Derwent Drawing Chinese White 7200. I'm also probably going to use my Prismacolor White. This is more opaque. My Prismacolor is more translucent, and I want to get that both feels in there. I'm also adding in a little bit of 90% warm gray going with the greens, and I'm going to use this very sparingly. I'm going to actually be shading up things very lightly so I get different tones going within that picture. The last thing I'm going to do on this background is I'm going to add in some aquamarine. Now what aquamarine is going to do is going to make it look like there's little holes going through the blurry trees. And it'll, like I did it a little bit over here, and it'll look like sky going through. And over it, the aquamarine, I'll put the white. So it becomes very blurry. So after you get the aquamarine on it, I'm going to take a stiff paintbrush and a little bit of mineral spirits. It's practically dry. And I'm just going to go over some of the tougher areas that I want to really blur out. I'm not going to pull the black that far out because I don't want the black dominating and muddying the picture. But I don't want to hold the black back either. practically dry, this brush. I want it especially soft around the leaves and the butterfly, because when I go in to do the butterfly, that's going to be very detailed and clear. And I like the black going out onto these things a little bit more. It darkens up the background so that it really pops. Okay, I don't want to do too much. Okay, I'm going to call it for now on the background. I'm going to reserve some tooth on it for when the butterfly is done. Then I can kind of adjust colors and tones where I want darker or lighter. I don't want to like completely do the background, but it's pretty much finished and I love the way it came out. I will see you guys in my next video.